You're listening to the Mindshift podcast. My name is Erwin McManus, and I'm here with my dad, Erwin McManus. How you doing today?
It's been a tough day. The past couple of days have been really difficult here in Los Angeles. And so I'm doing well. Our city is going through probably one of the most devastating moments in its history. And you and our team, Austin and others, were right in the thick of everything. And you're here on this property where we filmed a podcast at Mosaic on Hollywood Boulevard. And you're grabbing this equipment because the fire was right behind you. And we wanted to be able to save a few things just in case the building burned down. So it's been a really challenging 48 hours.
Yeah, it's hard to describe.
Yeah.
The Palisades are completely wiped out. The Pacific Palisades, which is an entire neighborhood in Los Angeles. That's so many people.
One of the
where,
most
key Los
beautiful,
Angeles people live.
Yeah. One of the most beautiful, pristine neighborhoods in the world.
Yeah, and the fires are running rampant in Altadena, and then on the PCH. I have so many friends who are displaced. I have so many family friends who their family homes are completely leveled to the ground. Luckily, I think Angelinos and people from here and people who have decided to move here have really rallied around each other. You know, people have been asking me, how do we help? We created a link, mosaic.org/fire relief. You can also do mosaic.org/fire. That lists everything we're doing, from prayer to action to donate now to links and email and text links for if you need help, to reach out as a resource. And we have people actively engaging and reaching back out to those people. I know I have friends all over the world who have hit me up saying we're donating. Shout out to some of the most amazing human beings on Instagram and text, to the friends who have reached out and just sent their condolences, their prayers. People, my old boss from YSL, Roma Shaw, who is like, it makes me emotional. She texted me at like midnight last night because she has a newborn. So she's up feeding, and she texted me throughout the entire night last night. And it was just one of those things where I really appreciated just like that big sister, you know, even at being at 36 years old, it's always really comforting and heartwarming when someone across the country, you know, who invested a year into your life 15 or 12 years ago still cares. And also like her counterpart, Gwen, who was all of our boss, reached out as well. And it was just very beautiful to have the support, at least digitally. And then in person, just, I can't commend enough the people who showed up yesterday. You know, Austin was here, and I guess we should walk through kind of how that happened. But, you know, huge shout out to Austin St. John and Josue, Carlos Pimentel, who's the campus pastor of Hollywood and Los Angeles and the campuses we have across the globe. And who else was here? Adon came in. Marcus Botello came in last minute, which is insane. Drove in he does not live close. And it was just really beautiful how many people came without being asked to come, and just showed up to help. And we were just trying to get enough stuff out to, if we needed to pop up and do church, or if we needed to, you know, to do this podcast,
or just do it from a live stream or whatever.
And so we were trying to grab the bare basics. I think Austin was really savvy and pulled the right tech stuff and kind of told us what to leave and what to not, what was important and not.
Yeah, we had to work from the assumption that this building might not be here.
Yeah, and so what's ironic is that yesterday was already a hard day, because there's so much confusion in the city, so much chaos. Mostly the fires were in PCH and Pacific Palisades and in Altadena. And, you know, we were relatively safe being here in Hollywood. And then by the time, what time did I leave the office, Austin? Like 6? 5? And then I think I got home at like, I think Mariah called me at like 5:30, 5:45, and you know, I had called Mariah a couple of times because I had her wallet. She had left it, and I had it, and so I thought she was calling me back for that. And then she goes, "Hey, one of my girls called me. She can see the fire at Runyon Canyon, which is the hiking trail like directly behind a Mosaic. It's 2 blocks away, like legitimately, it's 2 blocks directly behind." And so I said, "Hold on, I gotta call Austin. Call Austin. Hey, I just got a call. They can see a fire from Runyon. Can you just be careful? You're at the office by yourself." could you like look outside? And he goes outside and then FaceTimes me, and there's already fire, big fire. And that was the video I posted last night, the first one. And so I jumped in the car. I called you. You were in Utah.
I was in Salt Lake, and I got on a plane, flew back last night. I wasn't supposed to get back until today, but I just felt like I had to be here.
Yeah.
And I want to also like just acknowledge the people all over the world who've been so gracious, and they really are a part of our community. I mean, I think I've gotten texts from Dubai, from South Africa.
You're talking about Switzerland. We were on the news in Switzerland.
New Zealand. You know, it's amazing when you realize you have a global community, and people who are really with you and for you. And one of my friends sent a text. I haven't heard from him in several years. And he said, hey, we're sending a check for $20,000 to help Mosaic with relief. And what a great way to hear from someone that you hadn't heard from in a long time. And I just texted him back. I said, you don't really even know how timely this is.
I think we should talk about that person, because I feel like those types of people are always anonymous, but what they do is so, because also his mom posted. So, so and tagged Mosaic Dream Center.
I love that.
So,
well, this is David Meyer, and his mom is Joyce Meyer.
Yeah.
And, you know, Joyce Meyer is probably one of the most prolific and
she's the
famous Bible teachers in the world.
She's the GOAT.
And what people don't maybe realize about her is how incredibly generous she is.
Yes.
And this is not the first time David has shown up for us. It's not the first time Joyce has.
Didn't she?
Doesn't really know us, you know, that well. I mean, I have been on her show a few times in the years past, but really she knows. You know, millions of people think they know her, you know.
Right. And she's an easy person to like, okay, I know her, but she may not know
you. Yeah. But to me, the whole point of it is this is what they do in private.
Yeah.
This is what they do of their own initiative. I wouldn't have even thought about asking them to contribute or asking them for money or asking them to help us help people. They were just so proactive that he, you know, a lot of people say, what do you need? He didn't even ask that. He said, we're sending 20,000. You know, you figure it out from there. And there's just something very special about that. Very
special. And, you know, we want to reiterate that our hearts go out and our prayers go out to every single person and family that's been affected. People who were displaced, who had to evacuate their homes, the people who lost their homes and everything that they had, to people who've lost their lives. I mean, I want to just also thank the firefighters, the police officers, the local government has completely failed. Our city, the people and the citizens and the relief workers. Karen Bass is an absolute disaster of a leader, and Gavin Newsom should be impeached. Even though they tried to get him last year, we should try to get him again. I truly believe these people are incapable of leadership and leading at a high level, and they should not be there. We pay the highest taxes in the country, and we get almost no support from our actual local government and our state government, and then we're constantly taxed on everything. The fire hydrants in the Palisades are running out of water.
We're out of water. Yeah.
Because they cut back the budgets. I think it was
$17 million were pulled back from supporting the firefighters in our city.
Yeah. So this is on our local government.
So we're going to lose $10 billion worth of people's investments, their homes, their lives, landscape, you know, natural beauty, $10 billion worth of devastation because you wanted to pull back 17 million.
You don't cut costs with firefighters. You don't cut costs with police officers. Right? Like you just don't do that. You don't. So I don't want to get too hung up on it, but I do think it's really important because it's stuff we talk about on this podcast. So I'm gonna go after Karen Bass on the podcast at some point, but right now it's about the people who need help and the beauty of our community, because I genuinely believe that Mosaic and Mosaic's team and staff have been first responders, and also we're part of the people who've been affected. Like our staff had to evacuate. You know, our team had to evacuate, and so many of their homes, and luckily a lot of us live just a little bit more south, and so we weren't directly affected by the fire, but we were affected by the smoke. And
it's brutal.
And like that might have
breathing here is probably the most dangerous thing for your lungs.
No, and that was kind of the scary thing was, I have really, really good friends who live, I mean, I don't want to dox anyone, but great friends who live right behind the neighborhood of Mosaic, below Runyon Canyon. And they were calling people going, you got to get out, like make sure you're out. And Mariah's calling people and Jake's calling people. And I know you guys were reaching out to people and people on the phone just sobbing, like, I'm going to lose everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know the news made it look scary. And I would pride myself on being someone who handles themselves well in chaos and in crisis. But I called you as I was driving up La Brea from my house, because I live essentially the bottom of La Brea before you get to the 10, and Mosaic's at the top of La Brea before you get to the hills. And I was like watching it grow, like double in size, quadruple in size. Yeah. And at one point I'm just driving in the middle lane all the way up La Brea, passing police officers. No one said anything. Jam-packed going south on La Brea, getting away from the fires. Not very many people going up. People trying to get to their apartments to get their stuff to get out, their animals, their kids, their families. And we were just banging on windows, trying to get people out of the apartments, because the Mosaic's completely lined by apartments all around us.
You were out there trying to help people get out.
Well, people in this building behind Mosaic directly, it's kind of like those temporary spaces where people rent like a really small room.
Right.
But it's, and so I think, and it doesn't face the hill, they're facing Mosaic. Right. So we're just trying to like yell at people and like get them out and like, hey, there's a fire. One person was like recording music and, and trying to make sure, like there's homelessness everywhere here. And so trying to run up and make sure that the people I know who sleep in certain corners are gone, and then just went out and thanked the officers. Like the people were holding it down outside, and neighbors were helping each other, helping elderly people get down the hill because it's really sloped. And some people were just like, I lived here my whole life, nothing's gonna happen, And I applaud those people who doubled down, but I called you and said this fire's gonna take the whole hill.
Yeah. I mean, we've lived here since the LA riots.
We moved during the LA riots.
During the LA riots, that was actually our welcome. And it does seem like this is a city that has been plagued with disaster and crisis and turmoil. And the moment you think you've experienced the worst thing possible, something tops it. And I have to say, in the 35 years or so that I've been in LA, I think this is the worst tragedy, the most devastating event in my life here. And I mean, there's been so far, I think, 5 lives that have been lost, which I'm actually astonished that it's not more.
Yeah.
And so we do grieve the 5 people who lost their lives, but at the same time, I'm also really grateful that number is so low. And I did feel
it's pretty remarkable with how many houses have burned, that they've kept the death toll to a minimum, right? And obviously we agree, our prayers go out to all the families who've lost people, but I'm also like applauding the police force and the firefighters, because man, I mean, even here, like in the towers, helicopters were flying around, flashing beams into the, like on the overcoms going, evacuate, the fire's coming. It felt end times-esque, like apocalyptic, and very, very, very bizarre feeling, and at one point I'm, a block up and there's embers on my face, and like fire is lit, like ash and hot ember is flying off the hill, and it was just the most strange feeling, and it was very sobering, right? And
I do want to say something about the role of the church in crises like this.
Please.
Because, I got a text from, my sister saying, hey, I hope, you listen carefully to God and you get the family out as quickly as possible. And my response to her was, our team and our family are frontliners. And, if you have a fire, you don't expect the firemen to run from the fire to go to safety. You expect them to run to the fire. There has to be someone who's committed to running to the danger, running to the crisis. If you have a tragic car accident, you expect the paramedics to run toward that accident, not away from it. And there's a reason there's a certain kind of person who chooses to work in an emergency room, and they don't leave the emergency room because there's too many emergencies. And I just want to say this because I think this is one of the unique things about Mosaic, but I also think it's one of the beautiful things about the church around the world, is that the church, when she operates properly, we are the frontliners. We don't run from the fire. We run to the fire. We don't run from the danger. We run to the danger. And I just really was so proud of our teams who decided to choose service over safety. And I know that's an irrational thing to say because it makes perfect sense. It's perfectly rational. Just say, take care of yourself, protect yourself, make sure you're safe. And even, the timing of it is I ended up flying to Salt Lake City before the fire started to speak at a business conference with a few thousand people. And then the fires break out while I'm there, and I can't sleep all night because I'm feeling paralyzed. I can't get back, and I'm traumatized what's happening, and so concerned. And then I fulfilled my responsibility to speak, and then I got on a plane yesterday, and as fast as I could. And, Kim, your mom, my wife, was just, saying, please don't come back. Please don't come back. Your lungs are so bad. You can't breathe this. It could have a really devastating effect on you. But I already made that decision so many years ago. It's not like I'm not making a decision whether I'm going to come back or not. I made that decision a long time ago. And I can't expect our team, I can't expect you and Austin and Carlos and David and Joe and all these guys and Mariah and Jill and, I can't expect our teams to have courage and lean in the crisis if I'm going to stay in beautiful, Utah and breathe in pristine air while you guys are fighting this incredible crisis in the city. And I do think that it's an important thing to note, because we are going to talk about political leadership, that leadership has to always decide to run toward the fire, or you're just not a leader. And you may have a position, but you're not a leader. And I want to say this in the backdrop of, I know this is not for everyone. Not everyone has the temperament to be a Navy SEAL. Not everyone has a temperament to be a firefighter or to be a paramedic. I understand that's a kind of a unique kind of personality, but I also think that there's been a misunderstanding of, the church isn't really supposed to be for the weak of heart, or at least leadership. The community's for everyone. But leadership is not for the weak of heart, for the faint of heart. Leadership needs to be, at the very core, a posture of servanthood. We are here to serve. And when people are in crisis, and when people are losing their lives, and people are losing their homes, and people are facing destruction and devastation, to me, that's not even a question of where the church is supposed to be and what we're supposed to do. We must be present. And I'm just really grateful for our Mosaic community and for choosing to be present and for serving. And it's not just today, that's gonna be real and gonna be true and gonna be necessary for days and weeks and months and maybe years to come, because LA has experienced a devastation that's gonna take maybe even decades to overcome.
Yeah, I don't know how the Palisades recover from this.
Yeah.
There's an entire town that has completely burned down, and sadly, I think Malibu, I talked to my friends who were in Malibu, and they weren't affected, but they were like the first to get out.
Yeah.
They were evacuated pretty early, but they had a scare a month ago. I jumped on the phone with them. One of the sisters' house had burned down. The other sister's apartment was still fine. They're good friends of mine, and they've come into Mosaic, and they were in good spirits. I think the sister whose house had burned down, and her family, they were out of town, so I think they felt grateful, but then also sad that they lost all their stuff and memories and stuff.
Right.
But then the sister who had family friends, and they were all moving out together. So she had a tight knit community. But I think they were a bit more ready for it because it happened a month ago. But I think, the friends who are getting just so many devastating texts and videos of friends that grew up in the Palisades and grew up in the towns around it, because it's not just the immediate town, right? And
Right.
and it's a wealthy little town, but not everyone in the town's wealthy.
Right.
And the people who go to the high schools and people who work at the schools, and it's like you have teachers and principals whose houses have burned down, and people who are just a part of the ecosystem, and there's a devastating loss. And I do think that's I have a hard time living in LA sometimes. Like I struggle with like, why do I live in LA?
Yeah.
Why don't I live in New York or in London or Miami or but these are the moments that make me want to double down. They don't make me, if anything, they trauma bond me back to the city, because I do feel like a calling to be there during moments. I do feel a calling to be there during moments that are hard. I think that's what we're called to be. And it was really sweet to have, our amazing Elisa Duran drove in an hour from their house to just help and be here during the day.
His presence is the most powerful part of leadership.
Yeah. And so I just want to like shout out to our team, because they just showed up, man. And I had David Arcos driving into Hollywood trying to get in. He's like, I can't get in. I can't get in.
Joe being stuck on the 101.
And Joe's stuck. And so it's like everyone who could tried. And it just was so helpful. And and I also like, and then like little Rooney was here. Tessa's daughter was chilling on her iPad while we were working on stuff. And so, our people have asked like what we need help with just the basics. Our team's small, and it's definitely a little overwhelmed right now with having to like, but getting to help and having to help people who are in times of crisis.
I was thinking about how I almost have to assign 2 people on our team to work on this full time and helping our city in recovery. And
we have a small team,
and we have a very small team. So I'm going, that's like running on one leg. It's challenging, and I think the needs are going to be progressive. They're definitely going to, because a lot of the needs are going to be even like emotional, and psychological and spiritual, and and I think Kim was telling me about someone who writing about, the people who lost their houses in the Palisades are all rich. And it was a very like demeaning, almost like if you're rich, you don't deserve empathy.
Yeah.
And, if you lose everything that you have and you lose your memories and the emotional, psychological, spiritual devastation is, it's immeasurable. And,
no, I mean there's a new restaurant called Bar Etoile. It's Etoile, Etoile, and the head chef, his name is Tyler, and he posted his house. I mean, it's a little house, like it's like this is in LA terms. This is not like a derogatory term. Like there's like house, like shack houses, like in Venice or in Laurel Canyon,
right?
These like old houses that used to be like hunting cabins, or like the back house is someone else, or the old garages, now they're a house now. My first house in LA was like a little shack, and so, but he's the head chef of this brand new restaurant. He owns a restaurant. He's so cool. He doesn't know me, I don't know, I only follow him because of the restaurant. And his house burned down, everything in it, and the restaurant's one of the restaurants, along with Sweet Green and Nick Jemay and that team, who's wonderful. They're offering free food, so they're like, anyone who needs a meal, come here, we'll feed you. And I'm like, it makes me emotional. Like Randy Perez, who runs you, or is it you Untitled, like Untitled?
Yeah.
He's also like an amazing artist who does stuff with like Great White and all these amazing, and like I think Nike and like all these amazing brands. He posted like, hey, if you need fresh clothes, DM me. I'll send you a kit. I'll fully kit you out. I'll send you clothes. And I'm like, that dude's like, that's the real LA.
I love that.
Like the guys who need, and it's like, it makes me emotional, because it's like, he does $85 a hat. He doesn't make cheap clothes. He makes luxury goods. He's like, you need something, I'm going to give it to you. And it's like, those are the types of people that LA's filled with, that are just a part of like the fringe of our relationships. And I just like, there's just so much honor there, I think, Yeah.
And 2 of our families in Altadena and Pasadena lost their homes completely.
Yeah.
And 6 update. Oh my goodness.
6. Jeez.
Every time I blink, I get new information. When I posted on Instagram, I only knew about 3 fires, and then I discovered there were 6.
Yeah.
And I'd heard about 2 families, but now we have 6 families who have lost their homes. And, just the recovery. The hard thing is people will be concerned in the moment but the need is actually long term.
Yeah.
And how do you keep people not just interested long enough to really help people, but how do you keep them empathetic and involved in helping people? And but that's why I am so grateful for something like the local church. I mean, we're here to stay. We're going to be here in the long haul, and I think it's one of the reasons why serving through the church is so important, because then people also find community and find connection for a long term. I think we should maybe for a few minutes talk about why our city seems to be incapable of handling crises like this.
Should we save that for the Mindshift community? Or do you want to
that would be
talk about?
interesting. Yeah, we could do that, because it's, I mean, kind of an intense conversation. And I think these are strong opinions that need to be verbalized and need to be talked about. But I think on this podcast, I think maybe our biggest goal is just to celebrate the humanity in our city of people helping each other and serving each other and showing up for each other. I mean, I saw this,
I think well, I want to make two
Yeah.
things really clear, that we can achieve true relief to our community through prayer and action.
Yeah.
Right. And that is, we call everyone on this podcast, whether you believe in our God or whatever you believe in, to pray. To pray for the people who've lost their homes, pray for the people who've had to be evacuated, to pray for the people who are giving relief and the first responders, and then to call to action. One, to donate, mosaic.org/fire relief. Go and donate $1, $5, 5,000. You want to, whatever you can do, because I do know Mosaic is an organization that can be trusted. And
it can be trusted.
That can be trusted.
Yeah.
And I know that it will be allocated to the right people. And so many people are hitting us up being like, what can we do? What can we do? And I'm like, the dust has to settle first.
Yeah.
Right. Like we're going to give as much help as we can right now. But there's also like a huge assessment of help of like, how do we help rebuild? How do we help clothe people? You know, and so that's going to be a unique journey for many years.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's the short term and then there's the long term, and we're here for both.
Yeah.
You know, we're here for the crisis and we're here for the reconstruction. And they're two very, very different things, but they're both really essential and important. And, you know, my heart breaks for our city. And by the way, just on a side note, even as we're doing this podcast, for me, breathing is really laborsome. Like I'm having to work really hard to breathe. And I just can't even imagine the people who live even closer to the fires, what they're struggling with and what their schools destroyed. Where families don't even know.
Completely leveled.
There's no place for the kids to go back to school.
No.
Like, so, you know, schools are destroyed. Synagogues have been destroyed. And, you know, it's just, there's just so many, there's just so much devastation. And it's also incredible opportunity to show up and serve and to love on people and to bring some healing and some help along the way.
If you're listening to this podcast, this episode, we want to say thank you for listening to Mindshift. We invite you to join the Mindshift community. You can go to erwinmcmanus.com/mindshiftpod, and there's a link. It is basically a community that's hosted on school.com/mindshiftpodcast. That'll take you right to like the sign up page. It's a monthly membership. We're going to do a private episode every month where it's driven by a Q&A, driven by the community. And it's where we'll also like have special episodes where we talk more intensely about Karen Bass's resignation and Gavin Newsom's and the catastrophe that they have and lack of and negligence that's led to this situation. You can't predict fires, but you can prepare for them. And so this is a community where we'll kind of hit the heavier subjects, and obviously we'll talk about this more on the pod, but I don't want to just go political right away. I want it to be about people. So rate and review this episode, share with your friends, get the word out. You can watch this on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and we will see you guys in the community and next week on another episode of Mindshift.